Okay, so we're going to start our meeting, and we are going to have public comment at the end of the meeting, right before we adjourn. We're going to ask our public members to mute themselves and mute their screens, just because all of our members don't have access to full screens. And what am I forgetting? Anything? We have Liz here, Dick here, Tom Starr, Kevin, Bob Connell. Oh, Kyle's not here, and Sharon. And so we're waiting on Kyle, and I'm sure he'll join when he can. And we have 3 members of the public joining us today. So Sharon, thank you again for putting the minutes together. Did everybody have a chance to look at those?
Yeah.
Our notes? Yes, and I thought they were fine. Did anybody else have any comments? Okay,
Good.
so they are on the page. So just to recap, at our last meeting, Bob kind of took us through the legislative authority and the executive authority, and we kind of understand that the legislative authority at this point is with the San Juan County Council, and the county council has the budget, and the executive authority for policy, creation of budget, things like that, is with our climate person, who is an elected official. Let's see. Okay, so another guest. Okay. And we talked about the fact that the Charter Review Commission has the authority to create this position and department. And we also last week wanted to make sure that our position has standing and can intervene in SEPA and EIS. And one of the members of the public brought up the importance of enforcement. And we said that today we would kind of focus more on mission. Henning, I'm going to ask you to kill your screen and mute yourself so that other members can see each other, and we'll bring you back up when we get to the public, if that's good. Okay, so with that, I sent out, and I'm hoping everybody had a chance to look at them before they came on, 3 ideas for the draft mission statement. Did anybody have a chance to look at that, or did anybody not have a chance to look at it? Dick looked at it, Liz looked at it.
And Sharon,
Bob and Kevin, I know, looked at it. Sharon, did you have a chance to look at it?
I just saw it like a second before I got on today, so.
Okay, let's see if we can, Kevin, can I call on you to share your screen and maybe put that up for us? Is that possible?
Yeah, is it that latest version?
Yes, it has 3 items on it.
Oh, I'm gonna have to get
No,
into
no,
that.
don't worry. Let's see, maybe, how would I get it?
I've got it up on my screen.
Okay, Liz has it up. Can she just go into share screen?
She should be able to, yeah.
Okay,
Down at the bottom, Liz, where it says share screen.
Got it.
Anne Marie, have you started the recording?
yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay.
So I said, all right,
There you go. Okay.
let me make it a little bit bigger here.
Whoop.
Oh.
Let's
Hang
see.
on, hang on.
Size in that baby.
Oh. Sorry, folks, I just disappeared it.
No worries.
The further you go, the behinder you get.
Okay.
Come on.
Yeah.
The other screen keeps going over the top of my screen. Go away.
If you close share screen and start over,
Yeah.
when you open share screen, it should ask you which screen you want to share. So maybe before you share screen, open that document large on your desktop.
Yes.
And then when you share screen, it will be an option. Or it should be.
Yes, it should be.
Glad you guys know what you're doing.
Yeah, me too. I was going to practice this morning, but
That's as much as I know, Bob. That is the extent of my knowledge entirely.
Funny, it changed the format of my screen, so I've got it here. Come on.
Here, I can do it. I think I've got mine.
Yeah, it should be in the Microsoft Work mail.
Yeah.
I've got it.
Okay, here we go. Okay, that's better.
Right,
Yeah,
Thanks,
okay.
Kevin, sorry.
No worries at all.
Yeah, that's perfect. Just that way everybody can see it. So the first idea, these ideas came from committee members, okay? So I want to thank them for participating and helping us kind of have our dialogue. So the first one is the mission of the Climate Resilience Commissioner is combating the effects of climate change and protection of the environment and the rights of nature from the effects of enterprising human beings. Okay, sure, go for it,
just a second.
Bob.
I had actually attempted to send a slight change in for that, which
Okay.
was the effects of the activities. It was from the harmful effects of the
From the
activities of human beings.
Harmful,
Effects
okay,
of the activities
of
of
the
human beings. Activities of
Okay.
human beings.
Okay,
Okay.
so everybody can make that change. Okay, the next one is the mission of the Climate Resilience Commissioner and the Office of Climate, Environment, and Resiliency is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts while protecting San Juan County's environmental resources. Okay, and the third one is very simple. The mission of the Climate Resilience Commissioner is to protect the San Juan Islands ecosystems for future generations. Now, let's not get caught up in the title of the position and stuff like that. We can come back to that and the title of the office, but let's go a little bit around and see what people have to say about these, or if they'd like to propose something different. Dick, since you had a chance to look at them early on, what do you think?
Well, to be blunt, I don't like any of them.
Okay,
I see the potential to combine parts of all three to get to what I would think was a more representative statement. I don't know that I can do that sitting here right off the top of my head, but I think we want to be clearer, and I do want to come back to the title of the office and the title of
Right.
the person, because I think those need to be clear to the public.
okay,
So I'll sit here and look at these and think about it, but
Okay.
as it stands, though, the only one that comes close to what I think probably would be something like what we'd want to say is number 2.
okay. And Sharon, you've got your hand up. Oops, yeah, I got my phone.
Yeah. It's kind of like these are from Mars, and the one I came up with is from Venus, I guess.
Okay,
You might say, you know, can I read you just like one sentence thing that I wrote for this
Sure.
meeting?
Please.
okay. Yeah,
Well,
please do.
because you had asked us what is the mission and scope of this position,
Right,
and I wrote for mission I wrote to create balance between human activity and the natural systems that drew many of us here and have been in place for millennia, creating their own balance.
to create balance between human activity.
That's too soft, and maybe it's
That's
too
okay.
general.
I'm
but I
just
think
trying to take a note on it. Okay, so to
Oh,
create
I'll send you
balance.
the. Yeah, to create balance between human activity and the natural systems that drew many of us here and have been in place for millennia, creating their own balance.
Okay,
And Sharon, can you send that out to all of us?
Yeah, I can send it out by email and put it in the chat, whatever you like, both.
okay, that'd be good.
I have one for scope too, if you'd like to hear it. Now, maybe this isn't the time for that.
Let's come back to that one if we can. Okay.
Okay, I just want to say that I think we need strong language, and I think we also need to stress. I mean, this because this language could sound, pretty threatening to some
Exactly.
people.
Sure.
And I think this about people versus the environment. We want to create balance. We want to create harmony, and we need a person who has background, wisdom, good communication skills, the ability to listen, really listen, and give empathy, and in some cases, I hate the word educate, but kind of explain why something needs to happen and
Okay,
how it can happen.
okay. Tom, do you want to chime in?
Here I am.
Yeah, what do you think?
Oh, blows my mind.
Okay,
You
well,
know,
that's good.
we are treading on such dangerous ground. It's unbelievable. I'll leave it at that. I am an entrepreneur and an enterpriser, and I believe in freedom in this country. And this will be, if it gets to the ballot, one hell of a campaign.
Okay. So, Kevin, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, a couple of things actually. So one is that in number one, so I would say that what I found in 10 years in Olympia and actually in 4 years on the county council of trying to push climate agendas and really climate action is there's some lightning rods for certain folks. And we don't need to go there. Like, I remember when we did the ocean acidification legislation and the Republican chair of the Environment and Energy Committee changed everywhere in the budget where I said ocean acidification, he changed it to ocean pH balance, to which I said, isn't that my deodorant? But in all seriousness, he just said he didn't want the budget to say climate change and he didn't want this budget to say certain things. And so for me, I didn't care what we called it. It was about doing the work. So number one says from the effects of enterprising human beings. I think that's a lightning rod and it's not necessary. I think many of us can say that climate change is 100% human caused and we get it and we accept it, but there are some who don't get that, but they still recognize that there are some climate impacts or adaptation issues that need to be addressed. And so I would say, let's not use any language that is picking a fight where we don't need it. And I think number one goes there.
Okay.
Number two, since I have the ability to highlight myself, this is, I think this is the mission, period. Like whatever we call the title, whatever we call the office, the goal is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts while protecting we don't even need to have this in there. Stop. We could even take this out right there and just have it say to take urgent action on climate change and its impacts while protecting our environmental resources.
Okay.
Or protecting our environment.
Protecting our environment.
Yeah, protecting our environment, period.
Get resources out of there because that's
yeah, that could be a
word.
lightning rod too. So just say while protecting our environment, period. And I think that's the mission. And I love, like Sharon, what you were saying sounded wonderful. It's too long.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
for me, it's one line and that's it. It's take urgent action on climate change and its impacts while protecting our environment.
Okay, let's hear from Liz. Liz, you want to say anything about it?
Yeah, one thing, Tom, I always want to hear more from you. So I know you're saying I'll leave it at that, but I find your input invaluable on the commission. I too, I'm an entrepreneur to the core. And you said I'm an entrepreneur and a something else, and I said, well, I am also. So it was like I just wanted to hear more about what you were pointing to.
Significant environmental impacts. We have laws now that look at proposals by developers in the county. We have a whole department that looks at those proposals for significant negative environmental impacts. And I think they're doing a respectable job. We've heard from Kendra and others in the environmental groups, and I'm supporting their activity. And I'm going to kind of rest at that. That I think that having been through the mill on a number of projects. And I think that our environmental precautions are good right now. They're constantly improving. And I think this office and this climate position are unnecessary.
Right, okay.
Okay,
And
excellent.
I just want to underscore the fact that I don't think anyone here does not appreciate the work of our environmental resources department or our planning and permitting offices. I mean, we appreciate their work. We understand that they're struggling to get as much done as they can. And, you know, I honor them for the work they do. So I hope you're not taking away from our discussions that because we're talking about creating something that we are in any way diminishing the value of the work that those employees have done, because that is truly not the case. If anything, we want to elevate it and support them. I'm sorry, Liz, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I appreciate the, just flushing out,
Right.
different perspectives. So, and what I liked about Sharon, what you had written is it held a sense of balance and wholeness. So it really points towards what it is we're attempting to protect. I agree with Kevin about it being long, but there may be some stuff to flush out there. And getting right down to the goal being is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts while protecting San Juan County's environment. That I might, entertain that. So.
Okay, let's hear from Dick and then Sharon.
Yeah, I do agree with Kevin about keeping it brief and to the point. I think that's the most effective way to go. And I'm pretty much satisfied with what he's proposing. I'd like to be able to take a little bit of a look at it. I think it could use possibly a little goosing, but I need to think about that. But I agree. Let's keep it short and to the point. That's the most effective way to deal with it.
Okay. Go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have a one-line mission statement, but I do believe there's going to need to be some more because that isn't going to tell people how this is going to happen and how people might be impacted. There's going to need to be
Right.
more.
So normally
like
what you
after
have,
that,
what you have is you'll have a mission statement and then it'll say, to accomplish our mission, we do boom, 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 boom. I mean, that's what most organizations do.
Right.
So just, I agree. Bob.
Well, first, I'd like to say that although my position is different than Tom's, I think that his comments do serve as an important cautionary tale. And I don't know about everybody else, but I am cautioned by it.
Yes.
And although I'm cautioned by it, I mean, it may seem contradictory when I propose some of the things I propose, but I'm an envelope pusher, and that's the way I think things get done. But I'll say this: the first one, which is the one that I proposed, has the phrase in it, "the rights of nature." I a couple of years ago didn't know what the heck that was and didn't make any sense to me. I have since been educated, and I believe, and that doesn't mean people who don't believe in it are ignorant at all. I don't mean to suggest that, but I've been educated about what folks who take that position think, and I'll tell you this: the committee, the process committee, as it's getting ready to tackle and is tackling the Bill of Rights that we're going to be putting together, is thinking about the rights of nature. And if that is not within the purview of the commissioner, we need to know that. However, I suppose it is possible it could be within the purview of the commissioner, and we don't state it in the short mission which we are presenting to the voters. I don't want to trick the voters by any means. I want them to know what is going on. But anyway, that's the way that I
Question,
feel.
Bob. Bob, if it says protecting our environment, does that sound to you like the rights of nature?
Yes, it does. Let me tell you this, from what I have heard, what was suggested so far, I am fine with striking everything from the word nature on, from the effects of enterprising human beings. So we don't
Right.
get into a boxing match with human beings. Okay. I'm good with striking that. So let's do that. Let's strike that
Okay.
from my proposal. So it ends with the environment and the rights of nature. I would be unhappy if the rights of nature is struck, but I would still vote for it. I think all of these potential missions are good statements of what we want to do.
Okay. Dick, did you want to add something?
Yeah, a couple things. I want to disagree with Tom. I spent years working with the State Environmental Policy Act, and my view is that SEPA does not adequately deal with climate change. SEPA was drafted before it became a big issue. It sort of indirectly does, but not, to my mind, not in an effective way. And I don't think the current system deals very effectively with the kinds of things we're concerned about here. And I think in response to Bob, terms like the rights of nature, I agree with Kevin, those are lightning rods and they don't belong in the mission statement, that it needs to be just a clear, simple, direct statement.
Okay. Sharon, you have your hand up again? And then Bob, you still have your hand up.
Taking it down.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, just responding to
Kevin's
Tom.
next. Okay.
Okay, just responding to Tom has been coming up so much over many years now, and I would love for us to have, as a county community discussion around it, and as a nation, a national discussion around the word freedom, because the question I ask is freedom to do what and at whose expense? And I think that's always what we need to be asking when we use the word freedom, because we all want freedom, and then there's the freedom that damages our natural surroundings and the systems that support our lives. So we need to have a discussion about what freedom is and what responsibility comes with it, and when someone else's freedom is being deprived by someone else's freedom, because it's we're walking a tightrope with that word, and it's very highly charged now in our whole society. Also, I just want to ask, are we bouncing off of the Honolulu language, or do we have people crafting this based on those already created documents?
No, as a matter of fact, I put together a couple ideas that were from other places and sent them out to a couple people and said, what do you think? Got any ideas? And those ideas were much more limited than what we're talking about. And like Honolulu, while it deals with climate and the environment, it really has a very heavy economic development component, which I didn't think was, from what I was hearing from the group, was where we wanted to go. And Bainbridge Island doesn't really get into kind of environmental protection. Denver was more loose, it didn't really say anything about what they were doing. It was just make life good for all of us, kind of thing. Bob, go ahead. I hope that helps.
Yes, having heard this entire discussion, I want to say that the one that I proposed, the first one, that's got the rights of nature in there, I understand what everyone's saying, and I think I've come to agree that I don't want to set that lightning rod up there, but I do not want to abandon the idea of the rights of nature. So I just wanted to know, the people who don't want it in the mission statement here, is that desire also to keep the rights of nature out of the charter in its entirety? Because if it is, I'm not for that. But if it's just to take it out of the mission statement for now, I would be willing to cut off at protection of the environment, and we would really have a nice short statement. The mission of the Climate Resilience Commissioner is combating the effects of climate change and the protection of the environment.
Go ahead, Dick. Oh,
I have
Kevin, I'm
no
sorry. You can go next after Dick. I'm sorry. I missed Kevin,
Right.
but go ahead, Dick.
Okay, Bob, I have no objection to that being in the charter and what your committee is working on. I'm talking about the mission statement for this job in this office.
Thank you.
Kevin, go ahead, please.
Couple points. One, I really appreciate where the conversation's going right now. With regard to rights of nature, I felt that when this language right here, I think that language for me encapsulates the rights of nature without having to say it. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff I'd love to say, but to quote Mark Twain, I wish I had time to write a short letter. So I think shorter is better at this point, and particularly for a mission statement. And then to Anne-Marie's point from earlier, the way I would see this working is this would be, the headline on the homepage for this department. Our mission is to take urgent action on climate change and protect our environment, period. And then it says, here's, our next year's, top priorities, and you have 3 bullet points or something, whatever. Tom, to your point, and I was trying to find for the last few minutes, I can't find the actual report. I found several articles about it. Not quite 10 years ago in San Juan County, we did what was called the San Juan Initiative. And it was a partnership sponsored by the San Juan County Council and the state government, DNR, and the governor's office, as well as the federal agencies. And we piloted a bit of work to look at how communities, in San Juan County was the model or the pilot, actually use and implement and enforce their existing laws. And what was extremely concerning was how damning that report was. When the final report came out, and like I said, I can't find it. As soon as I get a copy, I will send it to this full subcommittee. But it showed that of bulkheads, for instance, in San Juan County, the report mainly looked at the nearshore marine environment. Bulkheads, something like 60% of them were never permitted. And of the ones that were permitted, they were much larger than permitted. Docks was even more alarming. Something like 50% of docks were never permitted. And of the ones that were permitted, something like 70% of them were larger than they were permitted, and not by a little amount. Like a dock was permitted to be 6 feet wide and 50 feet long, and it was 70 feet long and 8 or 10 feet wide. And that was the norm. And so what I found in my time on the county council and in my time in the state legislature and in my time with Friends of the San Juans before that is we're not utilizing or enforcing our existing laws very well. And I think one of the issues is that we haven't had a focus that has been a sole focus like this. And the same discussion came up with us when we heard from Kendra. And, she's the deputy director of public works and the head of environmental resources for the county. And, I can't remember how many of you were there when we were laughing about this, but we were kind of joking, like, how does she argue with herself? Like when they need to put a new culvert in and the cheapest option is the best option for the road, but it's horrible for salmon. What is she like getting a fisticuffs with herself? Because her job as deputy director of public works is to do the road. Her job as environmental resources is to take care of the environment. And so the entire idea that Anne-Marie had that we're now discussing of putting all of those resources under one department and having them be represented by an independently elected official that has the autonomy to do it, I believe gets in front of the decades old problem we've had in this county, which is, yes, there are some good laws on the books and we're not paying attention to them.
And Bob, you have your hand up.
Yes, I think that what Tom brings up is very important, and what Kevin is stating is very important. I think that before we can offer this to the public, we had best do. It's almost worth having another committee at this late date that works on findings. We had best have findings that show that things are not working and be able to point to very specific things. And the list had best be long. because we are asking the focus to be turned in that direction. And if we don't have appropriate findings, then we got trouble. So I would ask us not to ignore the task of finding those findings of what is going wrong and why what it is exactly we're trying to address.
I think that's an excellent point, Bob. And I think this committee needs those findings before we make a presentation to the full commission of what our suggestions are, because that's the backbone of why we are moving forward, because we want to solve problems. We talked earlier about, we want this to be a win-win for the San Juan County Council, and we want people to feel like we are moving the ball forward. We're going to help our county and future generations. Sharon, you're up.
Yeah, I want to say this delicately.
Uh-huh.
What I see needing to happen, what I think is happening to a large degree, is a shift in consciousness and a broader minded understanding of how we as human beings interact with our surroundings. I don't expect everyone to be able to or to make the choice to go through that shift. I think that's where we are. San Juan County, I see us as a microcosm of the country, and maybe beyond that, but definitely the country. And I think we are looking at a shift in our culture and a shift in consciousness here. And I think all of the good information that we have, all the facts, all the people that we spoke to, the information that we've gotten is very expected to convince everyone that this is needed, but it is needed, in my opinion.
Okay. Yes, Bob, go for it.
I would like to make a suggestion here that you appoint right now a subcommittee to come up with these findings, these necessary findings, and or that Kevin does so with creates a committee with the full commission. I think it'd probably be better if you did it at this point.
Okay.
And if so, might I suggest, this might be strange for you to do, but might I suggest that you appoint our our fearless leader Kevin as the leader of this particular subcommittee to gather this information together for us.
Well, understanding that our fearless leader is a busy person, like all people are.
Yes, of course.
I do think it's a good idea to have a couple people work on this. And I was going to see if we had any volunteers for that. I see Kevin has his hand up. I'm not sure if that means he's volunteering or.
I just need to say that, Bob, your suggestion is great, and you should have raised it a week ago, because on Monday, my wife made me absolutely promise and cross my heart that I will volunteer for nothing else for the foreseeable future.
Okay. But
She
you have
said
some
I need to go
documents.
back to the gigs that actually pay, as opposed to the 19 different volunteer commissions I'm on right now.
Okay, so you have a document that you're going to find and share with us, okay? And Bob, you have your hand up. Does that mean that you're volunteering to help to work on this?
I could not. My
Okay.
plate is so full, and you'll probably hear this from a lot of people, but
Right.
absolutely true. I'm going nuts trying to handle everything that I've got.
Uh-huh.
If,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Can you
Yes.
take us off of full screen?
Yeah, that'd be good. Let's see, Kevin, what you want to bring us down? Great, because I'm having a hard time seeing everybody's hands. Okay, so
So I was just going to say, look, with everybody being busy and this being the primary issue that this subcommittee is working on, why don't we just say that this subcommittee is going to work on this, and we're going to spend the next 2 meetings like finishing it, and all of
Yeah.
us are going to have to do our homework and read our emails and contribute. But Bob, I love your suggestion. Show me the volunteers.
well, I think I do think it would be helpful if there are documents. I'm not aware of them, and if someone has some documents, that would be helpful. I have some volunteers that I know in the community. I could go to and ask for some information. Sharon, you had your hand up. Tom, you have your hand up. Sharon, you want to talk and then let Tom speak?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I, like everybody else, have a lot on my plate. I have a ton of unpaid jobs and very little in terms of income. But I would be willing to help in some way with this. And so
Okay.
I want to be part of a team.
Okay. And Tom,
I would like to ask my colleague Bob, and I respect your background, I would like you to define what would be the appropriate type of content for these findings in your experience in presenting findings in court and so on, given that this would probably be on campaign brochures. And what is appropriate? What kind of document would be prepared?
When you prepare a document that you want a judge to sign after you've had a hearing, you prepare two things: findings of fact and conclusions of law. The conclusions of law are where the judge takes the action that you want to take, and the findings of fact are the facts that motivate him to do so. So obviously, what we're talking about is what's going to motivate, what ought to motivate the voters to accept our charter amendments, if they do, is that they believe it's necessary. And so when you come to the section, which I think is going to be a big section, an important section, this climate resiliency, all of this that's bound in there, we have to show them that the job isn't getting done. And I don't mean necessarily that people are shirking their responsibility or anything like that. I mean, the job is like this, and even the tools we have are like that. If that's the case, if it's the case, see, part of where I'm coming from is comparative ignorance compared to the rest of you. I've only lived here 7 years. I'm a rookie, right? And you all, many of you have served in government and have a better idea of what's going on. So my ideas sometimes are pretty theoretical and they tend to get struck down. But anyway, I think the findings of fact, the facts have to be, this isn't working. We need to have somebody who combats climate change, because climate change is coming. And it's caused by these things, and we should be addressing it. I mean, if we find, for instance, that, it can only be addressed in Olympia, then we should have, as one of the jobs of our climate commissioner, to go to Olympia and lobby for those things, for our county. That should be one of the jobs, if that is one of our findings. And it's, you just have to look at where the holes are. And those are the findings. They have to be definite, not vague, not, gee, we really need to do a better job with taking care of the environment. That's not going to cut it.
okay. Tom, does that answer your question? And then let's hear from Kyle.
Well, yeah, so if I could recap, it sort of sounds like this list of findings would sort of be the evidence that we would present to the voters.
That's kind of it.
But findings and evidence sounds like the same thing.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so then we're going to hear from Kyle, and then we're going to hear from Kevin.
I don't need to be heard. I posed a question in the chat. Just it would lengthen the collection period, but I think we've heard some of these findings from people like Erica and other people in the county. Some of this is already done. I think the question is how to coalesce it together. But would it be appropriate to incur some staff time by this group asking for, some key department heads or certainly the people that you have in your mind, and Marie, for sort of fitting under this office. Ultimately, they're already motivated, I think, to have these findings and these identified shortfalls already. Could we just ask them to send us a list?
Okay, got it. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. So the ballot question, so there'll be a ballot statement, and there'll be a voter's guide that will have maybe the findings or the evidence, as you say, Tom. But I just wanted to say clarify the ballot question, as you're all aware, will be very short. The ballot question will say something to the effect of, do you believe we should have an Office of Climate and Resiliency headed by an independently elected official? Yes or no? You fill the box. That's the ballot question. The voters pamphlet is where there will be more information, and there will be a pro and a con written by people supporting and opposed to the position and the voters pamphlet. Our job will be, as Bob said, to do the findings, demonstrating why we believe this position and this department is so important. And I see them again as one unit. It's one question on the ballot. It's one issue. It's, do we want this department and that would be headed by an independently elected official? And so in the facts and findings section that we need to do, we don't just need to write up the mission. We need to, as Bob said, write up the facts and the findings to support it. And this is for every single recommendation we're coming forward with. So.
And I often call it the case for support.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of how I view it. Just as if I was going into a budget meeting and I needed to ask for money. Why do I need the money? What am I not able to do? How am I going to be able to do it? You know, and what's my timeline? Okay, so Bob, let's hear from you.
I didn't answer Tom's question exactly precisely. He said, oh, so the findings are like evidence. That's not exactly true. There's a whole panoply of evidence that is in front of you, and your findings are the pieces of evidence that you find to be true, okay, and relevant to your case. There's all kinds of other evidence you might look at, and somebody might say, hey, there's other evidence. Well, okay, there is other evidence, but this is the evidence that we find to be accurate and true. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Other thoughts? Okay, so I think the findings and the case for support are really important, and I would put those on the agenda for the next week. I think we should spend a little time talking about the title of the position and kind of the title of the department, just because we haven't done that. The only thing I would say before we go there is I have had a few conversations with people where I've asked them if we say environmental protection, does that cover Bill of Rights? And the idea is, yes, Bill of Rights of nature is bigger, but we get there through environmental protection. So I just wanted to share that. That doesn't mean what I'm hearing is the end all and the be all, but I think we're kind of moving forward on that page. Is it appropriate now, do you feel like, to talk about the title and the job? Dick, did you want to say something else? You look like you're getting ready. You're pulling a thought together there.
So you're saying it shows what I'm thinking?
No, I'm just kind of in your head.
That's scary.
I just got concerned when you talked about environmental protection, because to me, environmental protection is bigger than what we're talking about. We are talking about the environmental impacts the environmental actions that have a direct impact on climate.
Yes.
And I don't want us to dilute that. I think we need to be really clear about what the purpose of this office and this person is, and it has to be focused on climate. I even have a little bit of concern about using the term resilience, because it means different things to different people. We can talk about that, but I think we have to focus on its climate impacts and what do we do to reduce our carbon footprint as a county and to do our part.
Okay, I've got Bob's hand up and Sharon's hand up.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I just want to say that Liz got kicked off the internet, and she's now listening in on my phone and through my speakerphone.
Okay, I was wondering where Liz went. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
After what Richard said, I would say that, boy, do we all need to get on the same page, because That wasn't my impression at all, that we were just dealing with climate change. There's all kinds of rights of nature that have nothing to do directly with the climate changing. Okay, boats coming out and destroying the life of orcas, or doing things to keep the salmon from running properly may not have anything to do with climate change. It may have something to do with it. And my thought about this is that we were both protecting the environment generally, including the rights of nature, and certainly addressing the effects of climate change. Two things, not just the one. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Dick?
I think, Bob, we have to distinguish between the larger efforts going into these amendments to the charter and what this office is supposed to do, and making it clear to the public what this office is supposed to do. And that's a part of the larger effort of what we're trying to do with charter amendments.
Can't hear you, Anne
You're
Marie.
muted, Anne Marie.
I'm sorry, I'm on a technical issue. Liz apparently
one
wants
too.
to come in, and I can't, she's not showing up as wanting to join. So
She told me she's trying to join on her phone, but I didn't see her in the participants list. And
right,
she asked,
she hasn't asked to be admitted. So as soon as she does, I'm here bringing her in. Okay.
oh, you getting that,
anything else?
Liz? Okay, I don't know, I'm not hearing her now.
Okay. So Bob, did you want to finish up what you were saying?
Let me think for a second, because my train of thought went kapooey when my screen went away.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a discussion about how we need to define exactly what the scope is going to be. Kyle has posted something.
So, Madam Chair.
Yes, I hear you, Kevin. Go for it.
I think, so I went back and forth on this quite a bit, actually, early on, thinking about, do we put environment in the mission? Do you put it in the title? Do you put sustainability? Do you put resiliency? So I appreciate, Bob, what you're saying. And I had the same dilemma. Now, in reality, I am hard pressed to find environmental impacts that don't at least have an association with climate change. And both the examples you raised of orca whales and salmon absolutely do. Salmon, you can just look at salmon, because salmon lack of food source for orca is the single largest impact to the orca. Toxins, noise, so on are also an impact. And if you look at salmon depletion, yes, some of it is mismanaged commercial and recreational harvest, but a majority of it is watershed damages, lack of habitat for spawning habitat, temperature rise and salinity, ocean acidification we're realizing. And so there's a lot of things that are impacting salmon that come back to climate. That said, just because I couldn't think of an example of an issue that we'd want to tackle that I couldn't somehow relate to climate change doesn't mean it didn't exist. And it also gets to be a grayer and grayer area, which is why in the mission statement, for instance, as a guiding principle for the department and for this new elected position, I think if it says climate and environment, and that could be, frankly, you want to get simple, I would call the position the climate commissioner, period. And I would call the department the Office of Climate and the Environment. And, and then that's it. And then that's simple. And then we say the mission is what we were saying before. But I think we just cut to the chase. And just because the person's called the climate commissioner, look, Hillary Franz's position is the commissioner of public lands.
Public land.
Yeah. Well, guess what? she has more jurisdiction over bottomlands, seafloor, and marine aquatics than she does over forests. Half of what she does is fight wildfires. Now, yes, that's a public lands issue, but it's a whole big other monster. So I'm not getting so caught up in the title of the position. I just want it to be simple and understandable. And so
Okay.
for me, that's why I'd say climate commissioner, and maybe I'm convincing myself now, but climate commissioner,
Okay.
and then the department is the Office of Climate and Environment.
Okay, Sharon.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of this has to revolve around climate change, but then there's issues. Do we want this position and this office to also deal with our drinking water, our freshwater table, and docks and bulkheads that go beyond the issue of climate change?
I think that's why you include environment in the title.
Liz has her hand up, and then Bob, and then Kyle. Liz, you need to unmute.
I bet. Kevin may have just addressed it by adding the environment, but I was thinking about capacity and our water table in
Yeah.
particular, that if growth exceeds our water capacity, how is that impact? How does that addressed by this position?
Okay. Did I say Bob and then Kyle? I'm not sure. I can't remember who's up.
Okay.
Go for it, Bob.
I just like to, and please someone stop me if this is not needful, but I would like to make a motion that we adopt as the title of this created position, the Climate Commissioner, and as the title of the created department, the Department of Climate and Environment.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay. We got Sharon and Kevin. Discussion? I've got Tom and Dick and Bob.
Oh, not me.
Okay, Tom and Dick.
As much as I disagree with the position, I'm tempted to vote yes on this because it'll be the death knell of the measure.
Okay.
And Tom, please tell me why so we can change the motion.
Everyone that I've been talking to, now I will admit that I don't hang around with very liberal folks, but you wouldn't believe the reactions I get when I talk about the Commissioner of Climate Change. And this campaign, believe me, will be very interesting because it's such a lightning rod just to talk about it. One of my high school mates that I'm in contact with has this doctorate in physical geography. And I was telling him about the Fossil Museum in John Day. I think I've mentioned this to you,
Right, you have.
but I was so impressed with it. The mural on the wall that showed jungle in Bend, Oregon. I would be tempted to pay his airfare to come up here during the campaign and present his views that he's found after 40 years of climate change theory. So that's just my contribution right now to the discussion.
Okay. Kyle, did you want to say anything? You have to unmute yourself.
Not on the motion.
Okay, Dick?
I think we have to be careful about what we call the office and what we call the person. Typically, the appointed officials in the county run departments. The others are offices. I think maybe it needs to be the office, not the department. And I don't know.
I think the motion is for an Office of Climate and Environment. Am I wrong, Bob?
Yeah, I did say department.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I don't get the distinction, but
And,
I'm sure
well,
it can be explained.
what the distinction I'm trying to make is what is the kind of standard nomenclature in the county, and words are going to matter putting this forward. I mean, I don't agree with Tom, but listen to what he's saying. I mean, there are going to be people who are going to respond adversely to this. And in the title commissioner, I don't know, it just makes me cringe a little bit.
So what would you call it if you didn't call it a commissioner?
I don't have an answer off the top of my head.
Okay. Sharon, you had your hand up and you brought it down. Are you good?
I'm good.
Bob, back to you.
I started out with advocate for the environment. That might not be strong enough now, though, now that we have this office or department. I'd like to hear what other people have to say about office versus department also, because I really don't wholly get that. If it is the case that every elected official heads an office, then I think they ought to, this
We
person
should be
had-
consistent. Yeah,
it ought to be an office, if that's what you're saying.
that's
Then
what I hear Dick
then I
saying.
would have no problem with that.
Okay. So would that be a friendly amendment to go in and check for the consistency of like Mylene and the assessor and the treasurer and the sheriff? I think the sheriff has a department, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's the sheriff's department. I
And does the prosecutor have a department or an office?
think it's the
It's-
office of the prosecuting
Yeah.
attorney.
That's
Okay.
right. It's the office of the prosecuting attorney. I think the only elected official that's called a department is
Sheriff.
sheriff. Sorry.
Okay, Liz, you had your hand up.
So just a sidebar is what I'm trying to,
Okay.
in terms of protocol, when one thinks that a motion is premature, what are the options?
Vote against it.
Yeah.
Well, if a motion is premature and we want to, you can table the motion, or I seconded and Bob put the motion on the floor, so we could both withdraw our motions and then the motion no longer exists.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So in
go
the
ahead.
future, my thing would be to say is that I motion we table, I move that we table the motion for further discussion. Is that accurate language?
I'll tell you what, I will withdraw my second. So now there's not a second on the motion. If Bob wants to withdraw his, we can just continue under, it wouldn't formally be discussion. It would just be.
Point of order.
uh,
I believe I seconded before you did, so I have to withdraw my second.
okay, Sharon. Are you
All right, I'll withdraw it.
okay? Bob, do you want to go forward, or do we want to have a little more
No.
discussion and withdraw the motion for it?
I'm not going to withdraw the motion, but I believe the motion will die without a second. So,
Right. Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
same thing.
Yes, Kyle.
Has there been have I missed a conversation already about what other parts of the county department, or the county government might fall under this office/department? Is that relevant in this piece of the conversation?
Well, that's kind of like another meeting. We kind of had a two-pronged conversation. We got into it a little bit last week, but we drew back and said, okay, we need to talk about the mission. So we're talking about the mission today. We've got some ideas out there on what the mission should be. We haven't confirmed anything on the mission, but we may do that in a few minutes here. Right now, we are just looking at the title. And then I think as we begin to see where we have issues that are not being met, that might help drive us to specific areas where we want to see this office have a focus or the scope. To accomplish the mission, we do these things. And if we're doing these things, A, B, C, D, that's going to help us to define what's in it. I don't think there's any doubt that everybody feels like the environmental resource program ought to be in this division. Okay, so having said that, I've got Dick with a hand up and Kevin with a hand up.
To move this along, I'll withdraw my reservation about the title commissioner, but I do think it's important that it's called office, not department, because department throws it into the realm of the appointed officials.
And
Okay,
I would be good with that change.
okay. Kevin, you wanted to say something?
A couple points of clarification. One is I just was on our website, just making sure, and Dick was correct. The only elected office that is called a department is the sheriff's department. And then if you go internally, they actually call it the office of the sheriff. The auditor, the assessor, the prosecutor, every other elected is called the office of that elected official. the other thing to your last point, so under our, if you look at the county environmental resources department, it includes solid waste, marine programs, clean water, cultural resources. If you dive down into that, so when you look at that, that sounds awesome. It sounds like what Tom is saying, like we're doing a whole bunch. If you dive into this, I should be doing this on the computer so I could share my screen, but I'm not.
Everybody has Kendra's handout.
What's that?
Everybody has Kendra's handout from her presentation.
Yes, but what was not in Kendra's handout is the reality behind these different subject headings. So solid waste is our solid waste transfer stations and recycling, period. That's entirely a county function. That's a government function. Makes sense. But if you go to like marine programs talks about ecosystem recovery. If you pull up ecosystem recovery, it is entirely the state mandates. It's not county actions. If you look at marine resources, same sort of thing. Salmon recovery, same sort of thing. Derelict vessels, that's a Department of Natural Resources program that we participate in as a necessary partner when there's a derelict vessel. And so my point is, at face value, you look at the website or you look at Kendra's presentation, it sounds like we're doing a lot, but actually what we're doing is participating in state programs. And so back to Kyle's question, yes, we need to have that discussion. I don't think all of the natural or the environmental programs come under this position because some of them are truly like a public works. We're not going to do solid waste. This position is not going to run the solid waste transfer station on San Juan Island or Orcas or Lopez. But some of the marine programs could be enhanced and would be appropriate under there. Some of the clean water programs that aren't utility could be. So that's a discussion we need to have. And that, I believe, for me, comes under the facts and findings part. So when we're doing our findings is when we will define which positions are within this. Finally, I will say on the title, commissioner makes sense to me solely because it's something people in this community are used to. They understand that a commissioner is an elected position. It has authority. It makes sense. I don't want to call it a czar. I don't want to call it necessarily a secretary, although that could be discussed. But commissioner for me makes sense as a local position.
Okay. Is that good, Kevin? You're all finished?
Yeah.
Okay. So Sharon has her hand up and Bob has his hand up. And I'm sorry, Liz. Liz has her hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry for taking time on this. I just feel compelled to say, you know, I can't stress enough the importance of digging underneath the title of something. I worked with an environmental group in New York, and we were pushing back against something called the Hudson River Conservancy, which sounds so great, right? It's a park, it's a conservancy, but it was actually the Empire State Development Corporation that was looking to privatize the whole waterfront down Battery Park along the Hudson River. So dig deeper than the title.
Okay. Bob and then Liz.
I just want to say, or I guess ask the question, getting back to departments versus offices, and that the sheriff's office is the only department that we have. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I think of the assessor, the clerk, and the treasurer, and the sheriff, I think of the sheriff as being the strong place, you know, as opposed to the others, so to speak. My question to you is there a difference in the way that the sheriff's group operates from the other groups that are offices, because it's a department? Are there any differences, or is it just a name?
I think Kevin just said that when he went in, it's actually, even though in some places it's referred to as a department, it's actually called the Office of the Sheriff. Is that right, Kevin? He's online.
I think so. I'll check again, but I think, Bob, the short answer to your question is no, but Dick's point is very well made. Words matter in this case. And if you call it a department, there'll be at the least some confusion. If you call it the Office of the working title Climate Commissioner, or the Office of Climate and Environment.
But Kevin, wouldn't calling it a department elevate it to the status of the sheriff? Or tell me if I'm wrong, and that the sheriff doesn't enjoy a slightly higher status.
He's going to look that up, and let's hear from Liz. As she's coughing, I'm calling on her.
Thanks, Anne Marie.
I'm sorry. Do you need a second?
No, I think I'm good. my,
It is office under it everywhere on the website, everywhere it describes the sheriff's department. It's not called the department, it's the San Juan County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you.
Okay,
I wanted to point to where and how do we address the relationship between this office and other offices. Kevin, going back to your example about, piers and bulwarks not being permitted or being permitted and then overbuilt. So if the permitting remains underneath the office or department where it currently is, then to look at the relationship between this office and those other departments or offices, because we obviously would need to be able to have some authority to prevent a pier that's permitted to be 6 feet wide and 50 feet long from being anything other than that or less than.
right. And I think that gets us into the whole conversation about the authority. So that'll come up with some of our work on findings and some of our work that we're asking some pro bono people to help us with right now on authority. I just want to go back and see if we have reached a resolution on what we're calling this office and position, and if we're willing to close that dialogue with a motion, or if that's something that is for another day. Yes, Dick.
I'm happy, if it pleases people, to move that we call it the Office of Climate and Environment, and we call the person who occupies that office as the leader the Climate Commissioner.
Okay, do we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a second. Do we have Kevin?
Yeah,
Discussion.
under discussion. So I like this. It makes sense. My only thing would be that we consider this a working titles. I do think, frankly, to Tom's point and Dick, to your point, let's continue to think about this. Let's have more conversations with members of the public. I actually think, Tom, I completely appreciate we walk in different circles, but what I saw last summer with the climate protests was far more people on the streets carrying signs saying we demand action on climate change than people vote in this county. And so for me, I actually feel like calling it a climate commissioner could be what gets it passed by the voters, because I believe a super majority of San Juan County voters would support it.
Okay.
That said, I'm not sure of that.
Okay.
And so I really want to think about it.
Okay, so Liz has her hand up, then Dick, then Sharon.
So I either friendly amendment or simply to agree with Kevin, I would vote in favor of that as long as it was a working title.
Okay. So Dick.
And I am happy to amend my motion to say that I move that as a working title moving forward, we refer to it as the Office of Climate and Environment, and the head of that as the Climate Commissioner.
Okay. Sharon.
Just wait, just Bob, point of order. Bob, do you accept that friendly amendment as well?
Okay.
Well, I'll say this, if it's going to be a working title, I see no need for a motion whatsoever. It doesn't establish anything.
Yes, Dick.
The point is to say we reserve the right to come back to this, but in order to move forward, we're agreeing that this is where we're going to go with it, unless something comes up before we make a recommendation to the full commission or whatever. It's just to get us
Moving
beyond
forward.
this.
Okay, Dick, I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, Sharon, you have your hand up, and then Liz.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a slight distraction here and I missed the motion. I think I have it, but I want to make sure I have it correctly. I have, the motion is that as a working title, we are referring to this as the Office of Climate and Environment and the position as Climate Commissioner.
That's right. Okay. Yes, you got it.
Okay.
Liz?
And my reservation is the open opportunity to hear from the public.
Right, and we're going to reserve our right to
Yeah.
do that, and that's why
So
we're
that's
calling it a working title.
why my friendly amendment to it
Okay,
is to be able to hear from the public.
okay. Kevin?
Going to say, Bob, to your point, I think a motion is important today because this evening, Anne-Marie will be presenting to the full CRC the progress of this committee. And at that time, it will be valuable, at least for Anne-Marie, to be able to say, we had a motion and we're moving forward in this direction. And we don't have to say it's a working title. We just understand that it's a working title, that we may come back and readdress the verbiage.
Actual title. Okay.
And
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
And I have to say that, to your point, Kevin, that even in the process committee, as we move forward with the Bill of Rights, et cetera, if there's anything in there about enforcement, we may end up referring to, among other paths to enforcement, referring to this office and this officer. So
Yeah.
it is good to know the name. And
And
there are probably other
enforcement has
committees.
come up many, many times in our discussions and in the discussions with the public. Okay, are we ready to take a vote? Is everybody support, those supportive of the motion? Let's raise our hands. Looks like it's unanimous. Okay,
Wow.
okay.
We're either really lucky or totally screwed that Tom voted with us.
That's the way Anne-Marie does things.
Okay, just a second now. The next thing I want to talk about is I need to get us out of this conversation pretty quickly, but we've talked about the mission statement today. And we have gotten to the point, and we can do more of this next week if you feel more comfortable with that. But we have two mission statements, and it seems like the second mission statement, which was the mission of the Office of Climate and Environment and the Climate Commissioner, is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts while protecting our environment. Yes, Tom.
Could somebody explain the urgent context? Give me some examples of what urgent means.
Sea level rise on the
review.
Lopez Road. Sea level rise on the Lopez Road that's flooding, and that we keep not doing anything really about.
As if that's not obvious. As if to say.
I mean, you
that's
just
not
said,
obvious
give me an
thing.
example of one of the things that's urgent.
Yeah.
To me, that's urgent, you know?
Okay, but it's not a good example because it's
Okay, well then somebody else
incredibly
maybe will have a
obvious.
better one. Okay, yes, Liz.
For me, it's the destruction of our forest, which impacts the whole ecosystem. So build out is going to wipe us out before climate changes.
Okay, Sharon.
Yeah, well, it's sea level rise indications on at least all three of the major islands. I assume on other islands too, we could find that out. But it's also the insects coming farther north that, you know, could potentially destroy our trees. I mean, there's things been happening south of us with bark beetles and destroying trees. There's things that need to be addressed now, even if they're not here.
Okay, and Bob and Kevin.
I would just say that obviously, if the majority of this group believes that climate change is a real thing, then it will be addressed when it comes charter amendment time. If the majority of the people out there believe it, it may be adopted. It will have a chance of it being adopted. If the majority of the people do not believe that climate change is real, then it won't be adopted. And I think we are spinning our wheels here, doing any arguing about whether climate change is real.
Okay, good point. Kevin.
I forgot.
Okay, so are we at a point where we want to take on the mission now and see if we want to make a motion to move on that, or is this something that everybody wants to think about until next week? Yes, Bob. Yes,
I
Kevin.
move that we adopt the last one, I think it was Kevin's, that you read.
Okay,
Would you read that for me one more time? I want to make sure I have the whole
I
thing.
just put it in chat
okay,
and I simplified it further.
okay,
The mission of the Office of the Climate Commissioner is to take urgent action to combat climate change and protect our environment. And now I remember my point. It was in response to Tom. I think the greatest, most urgent action we need to take gets to Liz's point. If you haven't read it, there is a very peer-reviewed paper. Actually, several studies have come out, but the most recent one shows San Juan County is the single greatest threat of wildfires of anywhere in Western Washington, Oregon, or California. And the
Finding
reason
number one.
why our forests are not healthy, and we have a significant amount of fuel in the forests. It's why we created a civilian conservation corps and created a whole bunch of jobs this summer on Orcas Island. And that now wildfires are not caused by climate change. Wildfire seasons, however, are lasting longer, and wildfires are more severe, directly attributed to climate change. And so that's what we're facing here is we have a fuel load and a health of a forest to beetle infestation and other things, monocrops and clear cutting, so not climate change. But we are at risk of serious wildfires here, and we have mostly volunteer fire department. So, but that mission I just put in there, that's what I would say is a great way to go with the mission. And I would just call it, if the position is going to be the climate commissioner, I think we call it the office of the climate commissioner, is the way I'm thinking in the last 2 minutes.
No.
I think I'm
Climate
up
and
next.
environment.
Yes, Liz, go ahead.
I think I'm up next, and I'm back in the same position I was a minute ago. I feel remiss to vote on language before we've heard from the public. I don't understand the process. I think it goes back to the Robert's Rules of Laws, the arcane separation of the people that we're going to need their, buy-in with, to not keep allowing every opportunity for them to influence the creation of the document before we vote on the document.
Sharon and then Kevin.
All right. Well, first of all, we have 2 minutes left until public comment if we're ending this meeting at 11:30.
And how does the public know?
Wait. The other thing is we're making recommendations to the full CRC. So we still have time for public comment, in my opinion. Am I right about that?
Kevin.
So 2 things, Liz, it's one of the reasons why I was saying call it a working title, is we may hear back from people. However, we were elected to do a job, and our job is to come up with recommendations. And so at some point we got to pull the trigger. And as you're going to hear from me this evening, I am really going to begin pushing the subcommittees to conclude their
We need to
processes
start wrapping,
and
so
come
we
to the
can
full
talk.
commission with recommendations, so we can have full commission conversations where we also tend to have greater public input. And then before we go back to the county council, sometime in May, we will have another round of town halls where we will have additional input and maybe make some tweaks. But really at that point, what we're going to be doing is saying, here's the recommendations we've come out with. And then we have the greatest public input, which we have a full campaign and a public vote of anybody who wants to fill out a ballot, which hopefully is above 90%.
Okay, Dick has his hand up.
I agree with everything Kevin just said. We got elected to do a job. We are the public's representatives. And while we want and need public input, we have to make some decisions. And the other thing I have is a question. Was there a motion made to adopt Kevin's language as the mission statement?
No, there was not.
Yes, I made such a motion.
Oh, you did. Oh, you did, Bob. Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
did.
Did I have a second?
Then I second that motion.
Okay. Do we need more discussion?
Can I have that again? I'm having trouble keeping up with this. What was the motion and who seconded?
Okay,
Kevin knows.
Bob
So
Bob moved the motion, Dick seconded it, and the language is what Kevin put in chat, with the exception of the fact that it's the Office of Climate and Environment.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Kyle.
Kevin, did you have something?
Go ahead, Kyle.
I was hoping somebody could tell me what voting today on the mission specifically gives us that waiting a week with the language just for ourselves does not.
It moves us forward. It moves us forward so that this part of our discussion would be closed unless somebody came back and said, hey, we need to think about this based on X, Y, Z.
Okay, I
Yeah, we
asked
can
because
start
in another committee, we did a lot of the work on the wording at the end when I think people thought something was finished. And it was beneficial, or I felt
Okay.
like it was beneficial, so.
Dick, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I want to come back to Kevin's point that what we're doing right now is coming up with recommendations to go to the full commission. So there's yet another opportunity. People who aren't on this committee are going to respond to this stuff. So this is not final by any means, but it does move us forward, which we desperately need to do.
Okay. Liz,
One last time, I'll simply say, and Kevin, I'm going to keep pushing from this direction, that yes, it will go to the full commission and the public won't be heard till the end after we've again voted on it. And to me, we're not living into the fullness of transparency and inclusion. And I'm uncomfortable with that.
okay. Kevin,
So 2 points. So I'll respond to Liz, and then I just put other language in
Right.
to chat that folks can look at, and I have a point I want to make on that.
okay.
And Sharon, why don't I pause and we can go into public comment? The one thing I was going to say is Liz and everybody, and particularly members of the public, we've heard from the same people in public comment almost every meeting, and I'm so excited they're engaged. Where are their friends?
Mhm.
We have public comment at every single subcommittee and every single full commission meeting. And if the public chooses to show up, awesome. And we need to really encourage more people to engage in this process, because we are not going to have time in the 11th hour to change everything based on additional public comment. So now's the time, right now.
Okay. So we have a motion. We have a second. We've had discussion. Yes, Dick.
Just a point of clarification. I thought, and maybe I'm getting confused with my other committees, I thought this was a 2-hour meeting. Somebody just said we're almost out
Well,
of time.
I thought that we might not need to be on until noon. So I had
Okay.
actually planned to end the meeting at 11:30, but that does not
Okay.
mean that we can't run over if we need to run over. So we will
I'm not
definitely
arguing.
have public
I'm not
comment at
arguing
the end
for
of
a
the
longer
meeting.
meeting. I'm not arguing for a longer meeting. I was just confused by, okay, where are we?
Yeah, okay, so we are all here in Zoom, and if, we'll see how long we need to be at the meeting. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of accepting the mission statement as it has been proposed, say aye, or show your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
1, 2, 3, 4.
4,
What about Madam? Are you?
Yeah, I'm in
for
it.
this?
yeah, I'm in it.
Then there's 5.
Okay, so there's 5, right? Dick, Anne Marie, Kevin,
Correct.
Bob, Sharon. Yes, yes, Dick.
No, I was just confirming that I'm voting yes.
Okay, yes, Sharon.
We need to know who's voting against and who's
Okay,
abstaining.
I'm asking that now. And who's voting against it? Okay, Tom and Kyle. Okay, and who's abstaining? Liz is abstaining.
I'm sorry, what are we voting on?
We're voting on the mission statement?
If we have 1 abstention and 2 opposed,
Yes.
I want to say under discussion, I want to hear from people.
Okay,
And also, what language are we using? Are we using the final one I put in chat?
I
Yes.
believe so, yes. That was
Okay,
one.
so under discussion, then I have 1 point I wanted to make on that, which is there's a change, which
It's
we're,
already voted on.
We voted on it, Kevin.
Yeah.
And it passed out with 5.
oh, sorry, okay. As a member voting on the prevailing side, I would like to recall the vote.
Okay, do I need a second on that?
Yep,
I'll second that.
Okay,
no, you didn't vote on the prevailing side.
okay.
Oh.
So Sharon will do a recall.
Well, hang on, before we do this, let me just raise my point. There's a couple points here. One is I really want to know why Kyle and Liz are not supportive. I think I understand Tom's position.
Right.
The second thing is that I made a change in the language here that I wanted to clarify before we took the vote. And I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner, but technically with this language in chat, it is changing the name of the position, not just it is now the Office of the Climate and Environment Commissioner. And the reason I did that is I think it's important to be consistent. And so you're saying there's a Climate and Environment Commissioner, and their office is the Office of the Climate and Environment Commissioner. So it changes the title from Climate Commissioner to a Climate and Environment Commissioner.
Well,
That's what that language.
When you shortened the title from the original mission statement, you took environment out of the name of the office. We voted that the working title was the Office of Climate and Environment.
Wait, hold on.
Yes.
I thought we were voting on just what Kevin said and what he put in to the chat.
That's why I was going to recall the motion.
That's what I was voting on, voted positive for.
I wanted to make sure people understood that.
I'm in favor of recalling the motion and starting again with this, and we can do it. We can get this done.
That's what I seconded. I understood what Kevin's language was, and that's what I was seconding.
And that's
You
what I voted
seconded the
on.
Climate and Environment Commissioner.
Yeah.
Okay. More discussion? Yes, Bob, you have your hand up?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I do
No,
not.
that's okay. Okay, Kevin.
Point of order. So I will go ahead and say that as a member voting on the prevailing side, I would ask that I can't remember the exact language, ask that the question be reconsidered.
Okay. And then what happens now? Yes, Sharon.
Take a vote.
So
just seconding.
if the maker of the motion and the original second of the motion wanted to just accept that or pull back, then we can reconsider. And then we have to vote to reconsider. And then the vote to reconsider is not to do anything other than pull the motion back. It is not saying you're not in favor. So first is a vote to reconsider. And if the vote to reconsider prevails, then the motion is no longer, and then we are under consideration again.
Okay, so did you make the motion to reconsider?
Yeah.
Okay, and we had a second with Sharon. Okay, so now we're going to have a vote to reconsider. All those in favor of reconsidering?
Oh, I
Okay.
can't.
Okay, so what do you want to reconsider?
Well, so now that motion is pulled back.
Okay,
And so my biggest thing was I wanted to clarify, and it sounded like some people actually understood what I'd done with the language. But if we're looking at the last one I put into chat, which is the mission of the Office of the Climate and Environment Commissioner is to take urgent action to combat climate change and protect the environment. That is what I would propose as the mission. We could do a motion in a second, understanding that that is the mission, but then that is also saying that the elected position will be the Climate and Environment Commissioner. And then the office is the Office of the Climate and Environment Commissioner. But I'm particularly interested, we can get a motion in a second on the table, but I'm particularly interested in hearing from folks who were either abstained or opposed on why, because I'm nervous to not have as close to unanimous support as we can.
okay. So do we have a motion?
We can do a motion, or we can just have some dialogue too before a
Okay,
motion comes on.
Okay, Kyle and Liz, would you like to say anything?
Kyle, I can go first. I abstained for two reasons. One, I didn't think there was clarity on what we were moving forward with. And two, we haven't heard public comment.
Is that public comment today or public comment in general?
Public comment today on this
Well, we're going to
specific
hear,
language that
we're going
we're,
to
Let's do
hear
it.
public comment today. Yes,
And
okay. Kyle?
I think for me, maybe part of it, in fairness, is having missed some of the dialogue from the last 2.5 meetings, which is not fair to the group. But I really do appreciate the urgency of making some progress and ticking off some work product. I think the last kind of confusion is a byproduct of moving faster than we need to. I'm not sure another week necessarily solves that, but the wording is very important to me, and I'm sure also at the time of voting. And so, mission is, I guess to Kevin's point, I don't see how, having the mission wrapped up, if it were if it were a working title or a working mission, that's different, and I'm sure it will get some scrutiny at another level. So maybe it gets reformatted and reworded ultimately anyway. But I'm just not I don't feel like at the end of this meeting, if I voted on and it's passed, that it is the concrete work product that we're after. I think the mission, I feel like mission goes last, actually, when we're when we're establishing some of this stuff. So
Yes,
that's,
Bob.
It's a good thing that we made the title a climate commissioner temporary, because it's changed with this. And I think it's okay for it to be changed with this. But that's how quickly it became not what we voted on just a bit ago. And that is not a reason not to vote for this. I'm voting for this. I think it's good, and I think the change is good.
Okay, so where are we, folks? Do I have a motion?
Hang on, I'm putting something in chat that might be our motion. Give me one sec.
Yes, Sharon.
Is it feasible to hear from to get public comment before
No, we're
we
going to
vote?
do the vote. The public comment, as I said in the very beginning of the meeting, is at the end of the meeting before we adjourn. Okay? Yes. Yes, Liz.
In the rules of how, this game is played, is there changing a meeting that the public is invited to the end of? Is short
Liz?
that meeting allowed?
Liz, this is our time to work.
Okay.
And
I
we
understand.
have got to work. And
I
we've got to
understand
do
that.
our homework, and we've got to work, and we've got to move forward, or
Right,
else we're not going to be in the game.
I understand that, Anne Marie, and that's not my question. My question is if the public's been informed that a meeting was so long and then we changed that the
It
night.
said it on the
before,
top of the meeting.
But that came out 24 hours before. I'm just asking policy, is that procedurally, are we crossing some boundaries? It's
I don't think
an
so. Go
information.
ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Was the meeting advertised as ending at 11:30?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then Liz's point is actually well made, that you should probably go to public comment and then continue our conversation so that it's closer to the advertised public comment timing.
Okay. Should we wait and return to this at the next meeting?
No,
No, I think
let's do it now.
I think we've still got time, and we've got some members of the public, and if they want to comment, and then we can come back. And then I just put into the chat something that Kyle made me think of, which is we call it a working title, and we make it and I describe the title of the position, the title of the office, and the mission of the office all in one. And it's it's a working title, but we can circle back to that after public comment and then be done.
Okay. So we will
Thank you, Madam Chair.
go to public comment now, and then we'll come back. The public will speak for 3 to 5 minutes. If they have anything more extensive than that, we will ask them to submit those items in writing. So if those people who are here and would like to speak, would like to turn on their video screens and their audio, we can go ahead and hear from you if you put your hands up. Yes, Henning.
Briefly, number one, I totally support the work of this committee, and I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity to listen in. I deeply appreciate that we are going to be facing a difficult time as a community to hash out these issues. I think Tom is absolutely right that there's going to be a lot of pushback to this initiative. However, I think the initiative is absolutely necessary. In that regard, a couple of observations. One is I read in the New York Times yesterday that the Chesapeake Bay is about to appoint what they call a Bay czar, because they're finding that the existing government authorities are not implementing a restoration plan for the bay, and that nitrogen continues to pollute the bay and destroy the ecology there. So they found that they need such an office and such a person in order to improve the chances for the bay actually be restored. Along the same lines, I've been here on this piece of property going on 51 years, and I've seen major impacts of the island's development upon nature, upon wildlife. For instance, I have observed a radical reduction in the number of swallows coming every year to our island. And synchronized with that, I've seen an increase in mosquitoes and other insects that the swallows usually have fed on. And I'm very concerned about this. Another example, when I first came here, I would routinely go down to the shore, which is about 300, 400 feet from here, and put a fishing rod in the water. And within 20 minutes, I'd have rockfish for my evening dinner. I can't do that anymore because the fish is gone. And I'm finding that there's a little island here called Small Island just off the shore, and it used to be covered with seals. Well, now all the seals are gone because there's no more fish. Or about 30 years ago, I dug a big pond because I wanted to farm here. And so I had to impound about 750 gallons of water a year to be able to supply the farm with the water that I needed, because I couldn't get it from the wells. I mean, there simply wasn't enough groundwater. And miraculously, digging that pond has incredibly increased the wildlife, both the bird life and snakes and newts and frogs, etc., in our immediate environment. And for a while, it was actually attracting otters. Well, then the shore was developed and a lot of private houses were built along the shore and the otters have disappeared. In other words, what I've observed over 50 years is that nature has changed remarkably in tandem with the development of the island. And how to balance that is a very difficult question. And so I'm concerned about, A, that we recognize the need for such a conversation, and I think that's what this proposed office will do, and that we act upon our best insights. So I'm very much in favor of the work of this committee. I've read Ken's proposal. I support it. I hope that you can vote on it today. Thank you.
Okay, Alejandra.
Thanks. I want to speak in support of Kevin's proposal there that you're all considering voting on. My observation is that we as a country have relied upon the idea of human ingenuity as the way to solve all our problems. That if we just apply enough money to the problem, if we put our heads together, we're going to be able to figure this out. And what I see happening in on Orcas, I spoke with a couple of the guys running for Opalco, the Opalco board. Their task is to come up with enough energy. And what they're saying is, even without any change in the growth of the population, we're going to have a massive increase in the need for electricity. And the only way they can see to provide that electricity, given the fact that our lease is going to expire in 2026 with Bonneville, is we're going to be needing to build lots of solar farms on the islands. And I'm looking at that and saying, how are we going to do that while protecting nature? Because what's going to happen is they're going to have to cut down the forest in order to put the solar farms in the places where the solar farms need to be based on the landscape. I mean, there's all these considerations, but my point is, when we turn to human ingenuity and what we're looking at is, gosh, how do we decrease emissions? Inevitably, what we're doing is winding up with short-sighted solutions that end up in the long run creating more problems. And over the years of my life, since the 70s when I was in high school and hearing about the environmental problems for the first time back in Erie, Pennsylvania, when the local river was caught on fire and that kind of stuff. What I've seen is that over the years, we've just kicked the can down the road, and now we're in a much worse situation because what we did was relied on trying to figure out ways that people could make money solving this environmental problem while not changing the paradigm of our importance of the prioritization. That nature does a much better job than anything humans can come up with if we allow it to and stop destroying it. So if we create a climate position where the priority is we've got to deal with the climate, what we're going to wind up with is short-sighted solutions that end up destroying more of nature in the interest of trying to protect the right of humans to grow our population and build more buildings and build more solar farms and build wind turbines and figure out a way to harness the energy from the tides. And the net result of all that is more environmental destruction, which means in the long run, the problem is going to get even worse. So I strongly feel like we really need the environmental protection piece in here, because nature knows more than we do about how to solve these problems, and we need to protect it. That's my point for the moment. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you. Other members of the public who would like to speak? Let me close this out so I make sure I have everybody. Okay. Michelin, you're good. And Jean and Michael Peterson, you're all good? Hearing
Yes.
from
Yeah,
no one
thank
else?
you.
Okay. So we'll close public comment. And yeah, that's great. We'll go off screen. Yes, Kevin? You have to put your volume on.
Sorry, Madam Chair, and
Uh-huh.
thank you for recognizing me. So 2 points that came up in discussion just now, and that I wanted to pull people's attention to in the chat. Kyle raised what I think is a really important point, which is paraphrasing Kyle Herring. You can read what he wrote in the chat, but there are some other entities within the county government structure that may be appropriate to bring into this jurisdiction as we go forward. And what that raised for me was the question that Kyle's getting to, which is, do we have enough information? And Kyle, tell me if I'm summarizing this correctly, or maybe I'll just speak for myself. I feel we have a question now before us, which is that, do we have enough information to truly, even with a working document, say that this is our mission? Because some of the aspects, and this is what I put in my final point in the chat, some of the aspects of the scope of work that will define the mission for this office are yet to be defined, because that will come up as we do our findings. And so I think a way for us to move forward today, and a way for Anne Marie to report out tonight, would be that we had a lengthy and thoughtful conversation about the mission and scope. We are doing our due diligence and beginning the efforts of establishing the findings of fact to support this position and this recommendation. However, at this point, what I would throw this out as a question. Maybe today, what we do is we do a motion to adopt the working title and the working of the office, as well as the elected official, and hold off on the mission until we get deeper into our findings, so that we make sure that I don't think it's going to change much at all, frankly, because I think it should be basic. The one line idea that we have, I think, is a good one. However, once we get into our findings, we'll have a little bit more information. So I would throw that out as a question for people to consider.
I appreciate that. And I'm just going to jump in here, Dick, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Last week, I put together a document that I shared, as did Bob, and where Bob dealt with the executive and the legislative, I dove in and I put in everything that I saw in county government that I thought needed to be in this piece. And then during discussion, I went through different departments and I said, environmental health would be in here. And so I would ask that people maybe look at that, because when we had that conversation and we started talking about vehicles, the conversation then came back around to, we really need to have a mission statement. We need to know what the mission is of this. So here we are, and we're going around in circles again. So I'm trying to get us on a clear path. And so I backed out and I said, okay, so what's the mission statement? Okay, so you get your mission statement. Then from the mission statement, you say, okay, how do we accomplish that mission? And then you go in and you look at these different areas and you say, we can't deal with water and fresh water if we're not looking at our metering system. We can't deal with that if we're not talking about clean water. So we can go back, and I think it's probably not a bad idea to come back next week with a draft mission statement. But you guys, I need you to do some homework, okay? Yes, Dick.
You stole my thunder. I mean, I completely agree with what you said. The mission statement has to come first. It's the definition of what we're trying to accomplish. From that comes what are the duties of the office, what activities are going to be included. If you don't have the mission statement,
Right.
you can't identify those things. I think it's nuts to talk about not having the mission statement first.
And I'm going to jump back in and I'm going to say, I think Bob did an incredible job with his document, because what he did was he helped us break apart the executive and the legislative components so that we all, at least going forward in our minds, have an idea while we're waiting on the level of authority piece. We have an idea of where the jurisdiction at this point in time lies. I've got Bob and Dick.
All right, the mission that Kevin has outlined is so simple and elegant that I see no reason not to right now adopt it as the working mission, the same way we did with the other items earlier, which have already changed, okay? There's no reason why we shouldn't do it, and it will represent some progress, because if we don't get back to it next week or the week after, at least we've got that out there that other committees can use as, oh, this is how they're thinking, okay? So let's do that.
Okay. Is that Dick? Yes, so go ahead.
If the motion is to do this as a working mission statement, I'll support it, but I will support it very reluctantly, because I think we have to make decisions. I will support it just in the interest of moving forward, but we have to make decisions. That's what we got
Right.
elected to do.
Okay,
Yes, Bob.
yeah, I agree with that. Thank you, Dick. And I hope that even Liz will be able to support it, because now the public has chimed in and said, hey, that's a great idea. We like that mission. Okay, so now we will have it from Liz all the way to Dick and maybe not Tom, but almost.
Okay,
So
do I? Yes. go
I
ahead,
so
Bob.
move that we
Okay.
adopt Kevin's mission as a, what was the word we were
Working
using?
title.
A working
mission.
mission.
Yes, Kevin, Liz,
She's going to second it, isn't she?
you seconding it, Liz?
Yes.
Okay, so we got a second. Okay, now we have discussion. Anyone, Kevin, you want to discuss?
No, just for clarification, I updated the language in chat
Uh-oh.
that I believe is Bob's motion. So I would just for Sharon's benefit, who's keeping notes, I want folks to look
Yes.
at that and say, yes, that's the motion, or no, it's not. It says the working title for the position, office, and mission. And then it's the language we had from earlier. And I hope
Okay.
Kyle votes for it,
Okay,
because I'm going to abstain until I hear Kyle's vote.
Did you just put that in the chat just now? Because I don't see it. Is it up?
I
it's
just
at
added it again.
11:47. So what he does is he clarifies the title.
So it says the position is the Climate and Environment Commissioner. The office will be the Office of Climate Environment Commissioner. The mission is
The mission of the Office of the
Take-
Climate and Environment Commissioner is to take urgent action to combat climate change and protect our environment.
Yeah, that's my motion.
Okay,
The mission or the working mission?
it
It's the
says the
working
working.
mission.
Working.
it's the
Absolutely.
The whole
working
thing is a
mission.
working. The whole thing is a working title, and scope and mission.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
working titles and mission.
Its
More dis-
adoption will be helpful to everyone.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Call for the vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Okay, Kyle's in. I'm in.
Liz? Okay. All those opposed? Tom? Any
Tom.
abstentions? Any abstentions? Okay,
Tom, if I buy you like really good beer, I want to bro down with Tom. I want to have a beer with Tom.
I don't know if he drinks.
No,
beer.
I'm gonna fly my friend from high school up here and have lunch with you.
Okay.
My guess is he's a man of principle.
Tom Star, I appreciate you.
I'll
Okay.
join that lunch.
Okay, so having wrapped that up, next week, we are going to be talking about findings, and we are going to be talking about how this office accomplishes its mission, which should include a look at the different departments and what aspects of those departments should interface with the Office of Climate. I think when we heard from Barbara Rosencotter, what she talked about at one point was the ability of somebody to walk between the departments. So every department doesn't need to be under this position, but every department needs to be engaged in the mission.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Yes, Kyle.
Come on in, Kevin. I'll be right out.
I see this as going to be, well, we'll see if it plays out. I think this is going to be the hardest work of moving forward, frankly, because if we consider what I've heard, what I've learned from Erica and others in the process, I know what I'd like from the position ideally, but I think that to work in its most effective way, it's going to have to, the dovetailing with what exists already, the body of work, the mechanisms, I suppose not all of us agree that the personalities are a factor, but that's part of what's already let critical work in this county be sidelined is different priorities. And that's very much about individual people, unfortunately. So I think this is challenging. I just invite us to take time with this moving forward and just listing findings. I mean, it's really easy to point out what's been wrong or insufficient so far, but how there is mesh with this. That's a lot of what the public's confusion or question is. Like, what is this position going to do?
Okay. I think those are good points. Bob.
Bob is smiling.
Right. I'm smiling because I heard Kyle just now say that he knows how he would like this position to work. There is nobody on this commission who I'd rather hear his opinion about how that would work than Kyle. And I would prevail upon him, if this is all right I would prevail upon him to write that down for us.
Okay.
Yes.
And bring it to us and suggest it as a starting document. That would be fantastic. I think.
As a job description of sorts, or
I'm talking about. I thought you were saying that how the position would work, how things would get done. In other words, what the person's powers would be.
I'm willing to share the. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I think that'd
Challenge
be good.
accepted.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have any new business? Okay. So, Bob, you still have your hand up.
Oh no, I'm trying to take it down.
No worries. Okay. Are we ready to adjourn?
Oh, no, I do have my hand up then. Move adjournment.
Okay. All right.
Second.
Right. Okay. So we will see each other this afternoon later. Alejandra, I will stay on if you would like to talk more, but the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Good meeting.
End the recording.
Okie dokie. Thank you for reminding me. I don't always do that.